This meeting of the Planning Commission meeting here in Ascension Parish, November 9th, 2022 at 6 p.m. is now called to order. Excuse me. We're going to have that, and then we're going to have the oath of office for our newly appointed member, Mr. Tommy Knoll. Mr. Long?
Mr. Knoll, do you solemnly swear to uphold the laws and the Constitution of the United States, the state of Louisiana, and the parish of Ascension, and that you will faithfully and impartially discharge and perform all duties incumbent upon you as a planning and zoning commissioner to the best of your ability and understanding?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir, and welcome aboard. Item 3, roll call of members. Mr. Knoll?
Here.
Mr. Villa?
Present. Here.
Mr. Miller?
Here.
Mr. Kluwat?
Here.
Mr. Varnado?
Here.
And I'm present. All commissioners, with the exception of Mr. Nasser, are present. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 5, introduction of staff. Oh, you want to move?
Commission.
Do it again.
Stacey Webb, Secretary of the Planning Commission.
Jerry is IT.
Spencer Long, parish attorney.
Jerome Fournier, Director of Planning and Development.
Eric Poche, Assistant Planning Director.
Lance Brock, zoning official.
Thank you so much. Item 6, Chairman's comments. The Chairman has just a very few comments tonight. Yesterday, we did have our elections here in the United States, in Louisiana, especially here in Ascension Parish. And I want to give thanks to all the people who went out there, put their name on the ballot, and definitely congratulations to all those who won. So it's a very big part of our Republican democratic process, and we really need to support and give congratulations to those who came out victorious. And so thank y'all so much. Item 7, we're going to open up a public comment. If anyone has anything that they'd like to say on any of the items, please turn in a green or red card to Miss Stacy. And at this time, have we had anybody? Okay, well, we'll close that. Item 8, staff report. Mr. Poche.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you'll see in your packet, the customary subdivision report, there are no changes from last month. Everything is still in the same status as it was. If anybody has any questions about anything, I'll be happy to answer them.
No. Mr. Poche, I have one question. I've had a few people call me about the widening of Cannon Road. Do we have any updates on that?
Cannon Road has been widened. They put the first layer of asphalt on it. When they do the final layer of asphalt within the subdivision, they're going to do that. They are fixing to do soft cement and all in Windermere Crossing, so it should probably be, I would imagine, within the next 30 days that it will be finished as far as paving goes.
Okay, thank you so much. Does anybody else have any questions or comments? Okay. Moving on to item B, presentation by Kendig Keast Collaborative. Mr. Fournier?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, Brian Mabry, representing Kendig Keast Collaborative, is going to give us an update on the work that they've been doing for the parish on our Unified Land Development Code. He's going to reference in his presentations 2 batches of ordinance changes that were approved earlier this year, around March. And those batches included work done on the subdivision code, streets, things of this sort, as well as a drainage code. So he'll be referencing those during his presentation. Right now, I'd like to turn it over to Brian Mabry, who's going to be joining us by Zoom. All right, and you'll be able to see that on your monitor. All right.
Thank you so much.
He is also available at the end for questions. So if you have any, please direct them to him. All right.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Commission, for having me speak to you for a moment here. This is just to update you. Let me go back one. Update you on Module 1, just sort of a check-in on our progress. We as a firm, or as your consulting firm on this project, talk to your staff once a week, almost always, about where we are and what needs doing. And so just dropping in to update you where we are. This is our team that is working on this project overall. Mostly it's us folks at the bottom, especially Ashley Woolsey and myself, who are on the day-to-day work on this project. But we also have a sub-consulting firm, Tischler Weiss, there on the right, that is helping with some studies of your infrastructure and the producing basically a fiscal model that will tell you how much your new subdivisions are costing to serve versus sort of contributing to the tax base. But the main project and the main topic we're talking about this evening is your Unified Land Development Code update. We are sort of trying to straddle the perfect spot between no growth on one side and absolutely unchecked growth on the right, excuse me, so that there's more of a balance, so that it's not just the unrealistic and kind of politically unpopular, maybe no growth, or politically unpopular unchecked growth as well, where quality of life is severely impacted by just rampant sprawl. So we're trying to get you somewhere where you're sort of in the middle, where there's responsible growth that's sustainable for the future and also fiscally responsible. This is a timeline of our project. The grayed in and checked off areas kind of represent where we've been already, starting off in August of last year with the kickoff. In orientation, we produced a code diagnostic, which described what we thought, how your development regulations could improve. We also did, as Jerome mentioned, some sort of urgent, or maybe not emergency, but just some priority code updates that needed doing more quickly than this overall project was going to take. So we worked on those, and I'll describe those briefly in a moment, because I know some of you are new and haven't been involved in this project all along, like staff has. We're moving now, we are into the that blue box there with iterative code drafting, and iterative means back and forth, where we provide a draft for staff to look at. Staff gives us comments, we integrate those comments into the draft, and then give it back to them, and it eventually goes for public review, and then eventually, like any ordinance, goes to you all for a recommendation, and then to the parish council for their final action. And that's projected for summer of next year to be at the stage of actually adopting this document. Excuse me. We had 2 batches, like I said, of these priority amendments, and those are shown on the screen. The first batch is that were related to your subdivision standards. They were kind of a lot of smaller things that needed clarification, or expanding upon, or closing loopholes and things of that nature. Just some maybe somewhat random ones: preliminary plat completeness review, so that we can ensure that staff is getting complete submittals on preliminary plats, and they're not wasting their time reviewing preliminary plats that are not ready to actually be reviewed yet. A slight widening of streets from 18 feet to 20 feet, making sure that servitudes don't have fences or other obstructions within them. And then a more significant one, I'd say, I guess, was that last one, the traffic impact analysis, which was turning something that was sort of more policy and didn't have as much legal teeth to it into a set of regulations related to traffic impact analysis. The second batch that we called it had to do more with drainage, and those sort of bullet points are there on the screen as well, of things that were addressed in the drainage amendments that were made and that have already been adopted as well. Items related to drainage really tie into some of the things we'll be talking about over the next few slides related to like open space, because one of the key things you'll see over the next few slides is a incentive in the draft regulations for someone doing a larger subdivision to dedicate permanently open space as part of the design of the subdivision. And that open space can help to accommodate drainage. We know that's a very important thing to the parish, is having adequate drainage and making sure that you don't face, or you're doing all you can to minimize damage from flooding events. And so having good drainage regulations is a big part of that. Some of the key, now we're kind of moving into the actual meat of what we're working on now with the ULDC updates. Some key points, basically a countryside zoning district that would apply in the coastal zone area. And I'll have more detail about many of these bullets as we keep going. Consolidating the conservation and rural districts into a country estate district. Refining some of your provisions related to residential medium into a residential neighborhood district, having, as I mentioned, clustering with permanent open space, building in the standards into your new code so that a person, a developer, has regulations to go by that are in black and white, written in the regulations about how to do a cluster subdivision where there's open space that's set aside permanently that helps to protect rural character, helps to preserve trees, handles and can help handle stormwater and floodplain areas, and also serve as sort of a recreational or natural amenity to the subdivision. And then finally, just spend a little bit of time on these slides talking a little bit about some of the other standards that are in Module 1 related to those things on that final bullet: building design, signs, landscaping, and those kind of things. Last time I presented to you, I showed a table similar to this, but it didn't have many of the numbers filled out yet. So now we have some numbers we're working with in the draft, and you don't need to get too bogged down in the actual numbers. I'm just kind of wanting to demonstrate that we're getting somewhere and progress is being made. These show two of the zoning districts I mentioned that we're working into the draft: the countryside, which is abbreviated as CS, and country estate, which is abbreviated as CE. Basically, just to point to that country estate district, if you're doing a minor or a major subdivision, the more open space you dedicate, which is in that open space percentage column, then you get more units per acre, slightly more units per acre, as an incentive to provide this amenity that is open space and that contributes to the rural character of the area, helps with, again, with flood management and those kind of things. Going up one level, that CS countryside district is mainly geared toward that area shaded in blue on the map on the left of the parish, geared for very large lots, 5 acres, just sort of as a holding area where the parish does not expect to have much development other than just, rural style development. I don't know if Jerome, if you had something you wanted to add about that for the CS area.
Yes, I do, Brian. Thank you. If you look at the map below in that blue area, we do have a portion of Ascension Parish that's designated as the coastal zone by the state of Louisiana, and that area is outlined in blue. This single lot area, countryside, is a minimum of 5 acres in size, and what we're trying to do is limit the lot sizes there, and also limit the way that projects can be built. And we're going to have a very, very limited amount of fill dirt that can be used in this area to build houses. They're mainly going to be post and beam type construction, and we will allow a little bit of fill to put driveways in and some underneath the houses. All right. This project's also going to coordinate with the grant that we have from the state on Highway 22, where we're going to be elevating a portion of that road so that it's not going to create that dam effect that happened in the 2016 flood, all right? So this area is going to work as a bit of a flood corridor, so to speak, to alleviate some of the flooding events or prevent some of the flooding that we had in Santa Mont and those areas of the parish, all right? We feel that this is going to be a real benefit to the parish, all right? And this was outlined, by the way, in our master plan that Mr. Shakespeare was part of during that effort, all right? So, thank you, Brian.
Yeah. Next slide is just one more residential district, residential neighborhood that has the same idea to it. The open space that gets dedicated is incentivized by allowing a few more units per acre than what would be allowed if they just did the bare minimum. And so, and this would mostly apply, and we haven't mapped it out totally yet, but in that sort of peach or orangish colored area in the parish on the map, the small map underneath the table. You can see that this table sort of has a lot of information in it. I don't know if you'll get a copy of the PDF, in your packet, or the PowerPoint in your packet, but if you do, you could definitely take a chance to take a moment to look at some of the stuff that's in the table that's sort of more kind of dense information. I just wanted to show an example of what this might look like on the ground if it were built this way. This shows that if a person in the residential neighborhood district does a project, does a subdivision, and it's got 30%, and it has a 30% open space requirement. That means they get 2.1 units per acre, or on a 10-acre project, that would be 21 units or 21 lots. That would be set aside. This gives sort of a graphical, conceptual image for that. You can see there are 21 lots, single-family lots on here. The sort of private property of the houses is in that lighter green, but then the open space that's set aside is in the darker green. So instead of just flattening out sort of the subdivision with 21 lots and making them fit, that way, they're shrunk down a little bit, and they have, they're surrounded and within the center, that central green area, with permanent open space that couldn't be developed in the future. It would be permanently set aside. Some other benefits are that there would be a buffer, a 200-foot buffer that would separate this sort of smaller lot subdivision from any more conventional subdivision, like in this example to the south, just to provide a protection to these folks that are already, bought in and living here on the south side of this proposed subdivision. They've got their larger lots and their kind of conventional subdivision. That buffer's there to just so they can be assured that that's not going to have any kind of negative impact on their properties. And these are very desirable communities anyway across the country, these places that have these subdivisions that have open space that's set aside permanently and then might have trails worked into them and that kind of thing. There's also the benefit, as I've mentioned throughout, protected floodplain in this example. We're not saying that, well, Mr. Subdivider, you bought a piece of property that's got some constraints on it. It's got this floodplain here. You're just going to have to not build there and lose, that much sort of potential yield on your property. Instead, again, as these lots shrink down, we built into the table you saw earlier, as they shrink down, we give him or her room to have these smaller lots and get the same amount or even more as a reward for setting aside that permanent open space. And they're not penalized by having a property that has this protected floodplain on it. There are also non-residential zoning districts. And, as I said, this presentation is weighted heavily toward the residential stuff. So I've really only got one slide about non-residential districts. Those are shown on the screen. They're probably, I think, pretty intuitive. You can kind of see by their labels what they mean. Suburban commercial would be, like offices and smaller, maybe strip centers. General commercial would be your bigger commercial developments, shopping centers and things like that. Business park would be offices and light industrial in a more landscape setting. And then the other stuff, sort of probably makes sense as well. Just showing you one other feature of this document is the use table. We organized the use table according to use categories, where we're grouping land uses together and treating very similar land uses similarly, as you would expect. So they're organized by use category. So we say office there. Well, you might say, what do you mean by office? That could be a lot of things. Well, if a person if after this code is adopted and they're using the online version and it's kind of native online format, if they click that section 2.2.2E, they will get a list of all the different land uses that make up office. And as you can see, if I go back one, all that information is just kind of captured in this one row. So you don't have a very lengthy, cumbersome use table. It's condensed and efficient. So you can tell what each of those use categories are by clicking the link that's underneath each of those labels for the use categories there on the left-hand side. Wherever it says P in the use table, that means that land use is permitted by right. In other words, there's no need to have a special hearing to get a conditional use permit or anything like that. It's just the normal process to go through to establish that land use in that particular zoning district here on these columns that are at the top. These are each of the zoning districts that are proposed here in each of these columns at the top of the table. There's also limited uses, and that means that it doesn't require a conditional use permit, but it is a limited use in that there are certain specific land use standards that are tied to that land use that have to be met in order to do that land use in that district. I got an example here. So indoor entertainment land uses. In these zoning districts where there's an L, which is CM, SC, general commercial, business park, light industrial. If you click that link, you would see that there are 3 standards that relate to indoor entertainment. And that could be something like a bar or, and what would be a good example? A bounce or one of those trampoline places that my kids love, those kind of things, indoor entertainment. There's standards that tie to those, to that land use that in these specific zoning districts. And that's related to how far they have to be from a residential land use or district, noise and setting hours where they can't make a lot of noise on the outside, and having enclosed facilities rather than open and outdoor type facilities. Switching gears a little bit before we wrap up, there's building design and site development standards. So that's your signs and your landscaping and parking and matters like that. There's a convenient table that shows under what types of development activities the standards apply. So here's a column for building standards, low impact development standards, parking, access and site circulation, landscaping and buffering, signs and outdoor lighting. If you have brand new development, that's greenfield and new development, then all but the low impact development standards apply. Those are currently optional, so there's not a dot for them, but everything basically applies if it's new development. However, if it is just something smaller, like changing the land use within an existing building, maybe doing like adaptive reuse, where you're taking a building that was built for one purpose and redoing the inside and turning it into something else, then really what applies is parking and landscaping and lighting. So there's fewer requirements that come along if you're doing something smaller. And that's to help, with entrepreneurship and giving someone a chance to kind of get a new business going. Maybe they can't afford to build a brand new building for their business, but they can take an existing building and turn it into something else on the inside. And that makes it a little easier for them to develop. What remains on the screen here are just some kind of visual examples of what you would see in the draft related to parking. We have parking standards that are illustrated and relate to the angle of the parking space and shows what kind of dimensions you have to do parking spaces. There is in the upper right an image of a loading area. We have standards related to loading for businesses, and especially if they're next to or near residential land uses, they have to be buffered or screened in a certain way. On the lower left, we've got an illustration of some of the enhanced landscaping provisions that we're putting into the draft, where that's called foundation plantings, where the base of a building is required to have a certain amount of landscaping. And then finally, on the lower right, just an illustration of what you'll see as far as controlling access management, where in order to cut down on the amount of driveways on a street and that can contribute, to traffic problems or even accidents, requiring that there be more circulation internally and cutting down on the amount of driveways that access a public street. I don't know if Jerome had anything else to add, Jerome?
No, I don't, Ryan. Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that opens it up to any questions or comments anyone might have. I'd be happy to try to address them, or we'll make note of them and get an answer back to you.
Thank you so much, Brian. Would any commissioners like to ask any questions? Okay, Mr. Villa?
So go back to the slide with the floodplain, the residential. It's after the commercial, right there. Up, go.
Yep. This one?
Go back. The green one. Where you highlighted the floodplain visual. It was the visual slide. Go, next one.
Oh, this one?
Yes, right there.
Okay.
Explain to me a little more about the floodplain at no penalty. What are you saying there?
What I mean by that is, I'm sorry for maybe not being clear on that. So if this were a parcel that were undeveloped that someone bought and wanted to turn into a subdivision, the ability to cluster, like we're showing, to have the smaller lots than what would normally be allowed in exchange for the set aside open space. Instead, instead of saying that you just can't build there, which is true, the person can't build there. They aren't losing the ability to, sorry, I'm trying to put this into better words. If they were doing larger lots, for example, conventional style lots with no open space and sort of just setting up the lots within the subdivision without any open space, they'd have to avoid and not build in this floodplain area, of course. They're losing the potential to have however many lots, that would be taken up by what's there as floodplain now, however many, acres or square feet that is. When you can cluster, you still get the number of lots you would have gotten if there had been no floodplain there in the first place, because we're allowing smaller lots and they basically get a bonus. They get more lots than what they would have done or what they would have had if they had just done, I'm trying to not say cookie cutter, but if they had just cookie cuttered out, all the lots without any open space. It's just a way to look at it so that a constrained site, a site with environmental constraints on it before it's developed, the developer in the subdivider is getting the full potential out of it without having to just not develop in that area where the floodplain is. And in exchange, the parish is getting out of it this permanent open space that's set aside for rural amenity or suburban amenities.
And when you say smaller lots, can the codes dictate the minimum width on that zone?
Yeah. Yes, I don't have the lot width on this table,
right.
But the code does and can dictate lot width. We can make sure that somebody's not trying to do something crazy, 20 foot wide for a single family detached house or something like that. And then have an extremely narrow one that would, make up for the lot area. So there can be precautions against that.
Yep, and I would assume staff would work with them to come up with that number, or?
Yes, we're working with Brian and his team on a weekly basis. We have a Zoom call with them every Tuesday morning, and we're going through this as the thing progresses.
Okay.
So.
All right, that's my question. Thank you.
Other questions? Brian, I have just a few. These were some of the things that I've seen over the past few years. And if you want to go, I think it's 2 slides after this, whenever we're discussing entertainment districts, for example, and for our zoning regulations. Yeah, here we go, our limited use. So let's say we have, a bar and we have limited use with their location toward anything with residential or with distances. And what I also want to make sure of is if they have some type of commercial use or some type of restriction that has a minimum distance or anything else, that consequently the reverse doesn't happen. Something can't come in and encroach upon theirs that would be non-conforming. That's been something that has happened in the past and in various types of businesses. And so I want to make sure that if somebody does have a permitted use that they do have limits on, then consequently, again, that nothing can come back in and impose basically nonconformity.
Right. Okay, that's a good thought. And I know your example was related to bars. It's a little different in that if you look at the row above, there are a bar, tavern, or lounge is a conditional use. So, if someone's establishing it, it has to go through that process of getting the approvals. But yes, I hear what you're saying, that you want to have something that would prevent like they go through the process, they get their bar, they open it up, and they're following all the rules, they're spaced the right amount from whatever place of worship or residential or whatever the case may be. Then a church or something opens up very close to it that suddenly basically
puts them out of compliance,
messes it up,
yes.
Makes it non-conforming. You want to see something, and it makes sense. I'm just kind of repeating what I'm hearing from you. Make sure that maybe a church could do that, but it wouldn't render that one to become suddenly non-conforming, basically.
Well, it could potentially become non-conforming if they have to close down. For example, if we had the pandemic, if we had something similar where they closed down temporarily and then had to reapply for their license, we just need to make sure that should be something that we can protect against, for those business owners. And then if there's a way that we can look into having something like that, I would like to see it. We have seen that in the past, but it hadn't been too recent. Another question I had, and I'm glad you brought it up on here, with site development standards, and one of the things I really want to look at is making sure that we're having proper architectural standards. We had an issue that came up before the Zoning Commission a few months ago, where this person wants to rezone their property to commercial. They inform us that they want to put a Dollar General, and that's all fine and dandy, but we did request that they have some of the higher level of the architectural designs. And we want to encourage that. If we're going to have this new code, we want to start encouraging some of these higher level designs and more aesthetic, if at all possible, and having some of these higher standards. And what I would even like to see is if there's a possible way that we can incorporate with the community and neighborhood designs, that we have some type of minimum standard per se. Let's just say we have a brick on, a house that's built on a slab. Well, should we potentially tell them that they need to have four sides brick? Those type of standards we have this opportunity that we could start looking into, and I encourage y'all to look into that, please.
Yes, we will. We could do something like you described, that if a commercial building is located adjacent to, a residential land use, especially if it were maybe single-family detached, then requiring a masonry component, or that its design, be compatible with the character of its surroundings. There are already in the draft standards related to building design that kind of take the menu approach, saying, you need to have, a building needs to have at least 3 of these 8 or so characteristics, and so you're allowing some flexibility in order to be sort of business friendly, but you're also setting a standard where you do need to pick 3 or whatever the number is out of these 8 or so things like dormers, which are windows that kind of
Right.
stick out of the roof, a nicer entry feature, and those kind of things. So, yeah, that we hear you on that.
Okay. Anybody else? Well, thank you very much, Mr. Bryan. Appreciate you.
I appreciate you. Thank you very much, and y'all have a good meeting.
Thank you, that's all.
Okay. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, engineering staff report. I don't see Mr. Sharon, so I take it nothing's presented. Thank y'all. Item 10, the minutes, approval or denial of the minutes of the October 12th, 2022 Planning Commission meeting. Can I get a motion for approval? Motion for approval by Commissioner Varnado, second by Mr. Villa. All in favor? Aye. No one opposed. That motion passed. Item 11, the consent agenda. Item A, affidavit of mortgage declaration, Jameson and Heather Doré, 2 unnamed knots at 1443 and 1492 West Millian Road in Donaldsonville, Louisiana. Item B, affidavit of mortgage declaration, Eve L. and Steve A. Frederick, Lot C3, 10529 JB Alexander Road in Sandoval. And item C, affidavit of mortgage declaration, Danny P. Garza Sr., Lot D, 10539 JB Alexander Road, Sandoval, Louisiana. Can I get a motion for approval for the consent agenda?
Motion we approve.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Kluwat, second by Commissioner Varnado. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes. Item 12, we're going to open a public hearing to approve or deny the following family partition. Item A, Charles T. Insminger, the third property, lots 2A and 2B, Earls and Associates. Mr. Falgu.
James Fagwood, Earls and Associates, asking the commission for approval on the family partition on Norris Trails Road.
Okay. Do we have anybody here to speak on this? Okay. We'll close the public hearing on that. Any of the commissioners, do y'all have any questions about this or a motion?
I make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Villa.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Kluwat. All in favor? Aye. That motion passes.
Thank you.
Item B, Adrian P. Kelly, property, tracks B2A 1A and B2A 1B, BEI Surveying, LLC.
I'm Seth Mosby with BEI Surveying, here to ask for approval of the family partition of the Adrian Kelly property on Highway 933 in Galvez.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Stacy, would you have anybody to speak on this? Okay. We'll close the public hearing on that. Commissioners, do we have any questions, comments, or a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Kluwat. Second by Commissioner Knoll. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Mosby.
Thank you.
Item C, Alton E. Kelly property, lots C1A1 through C1A4, McLean Taylor, and welcome back.
Ellen Jackson with McLean Taylor Incorporated, asking for your approval.
Thank you so much. Ms. Stacy, do we have anybody here to speak on that? No. Okay, well, we'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, any questions or comments? We have a motion of approval by Commissioner Varnado.
Second.
We have a second by Commissioner Villa. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you, Ms. Jackson. And item 13, we have adjournment.
Motion.
So moved. Thank y'all.